Morning Talk with Siki Mgabadeli.
8 minutes past 10 here on SAFM 104 to 107. We're moving on and right now unpacking the new draft BBE codes and the impact that they will have on SMMEs. About 2 months ago, the Cabinet approved the revised broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Codes of Good Practice, and the purpose of the codes to assist and advise the public and private sectors in the implementation of the Act, but also they are seen as an attempt to deal with the unintended consequences that have flowed from the policy and legislation. As you know, the codes will relate to a number of aspects of BBE, from ownership to procurement, enterprise development, and the ever contentious issue of fronting. So I want to pay particular attention to fronting this morning and the impact that it's having on a small business. And you can weigh in on our discussion on 08 91 104 207, 08 91 104 207, SMSs to 34701. My guest this morning, Advocate Christine Gunda, who's chairperson of the Pulusang BBE Resolution Services. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Yes, good morning, CK, and good morning to the listeners. Just a small correction. I'm not an advocate. I used to be a practicing attorney.
Yes, sorry about that.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about fronting, because it's something that's been coming up from day one, I think, when when Black Economic Empowerment came into play, and there've been various noises made by numerous people, from government officials to those in business, saying we need to deal with this scourge, and yet it continues.
Pulusang focuses on Black economic empowerment, both in terms of dealing with issues you've raised now, like fronting, but also shareholders' disputes. And what we have found in cases coming to us is that fronting is actually very widespread. It surprised even me.
Okay.
And there's a particular modus operandi that is used, and sometimes it's quite crude.
Yeah.
All of them are crude, but some are less crude than others. And I think what the new legislation, the current amendment bill that is now before Parliament, is doing is trying to, from a legislative point of view, make fronting punitive. So it's quite significant. And I'm not sure if the public knows about this amendment bill, but what it does, essentially, it defines fronting, it defines all the things that have happened in the last 10 years since Black economic empowerment became a policy, and when the Act came in, it defines it quite comprehensively. And what is more significant, though, and will assist a lot of Black business people who have been defrauded, because fronting is fraud. They've defined it as fraud, and they've made it an offense. And you can therefore go to jail with fronting.
And we're going to talk about the punitive measures and also how effective you think they're going to be. But I'm interested in the forms that it takes, because as you know, in the start, it was an employee being made to sign documents that they weren't aware of, and they suddenly, it's discovered that this person owns 51% of the company and they weren't even aware of it. That was as crude as it got. But in our previous discussion with the Minister of the DTI, he'd said that they're getting even more sophisticated. Now, what are you seeing?
Yes, it starts with what you've just mentioned, the using someone's domestic worker. That still happens. We got a call last week from someone in the Free State, which said a couple asked their domestic worker, made her 51% shareholder, and then went out and got contracts, and it's always from parastatals that they get these contracts.
Yeah.
And they've refused to give her any money, so there's no benefit. That's a crude version. What we have just agreed to do, we've just accepted a mandate from a company that involves a listed company, and that's scary because the company is quite big. And this is the modus operandi. You set up the BE entity, or you go into a JV. Say if you're a big company, what you do is you do JVs with various business people. So you insulate your core business from Black economic empowerment as if it's a contagion, or some disease. And you set up JVs specifically to get a particular contract from a particular parastatal. And when that contract finishes, you then unwind that JV. But what you do, and this is the sophisticated version, you then set up not subsidiaries. Because remember, if you set up a subsidiary, then there is a relationship between the two. But what you do is you take the BE entity and you set up a number of separate companies, or those companies have existed. And what you then do, you enter these fraudulent agreements to provide services to the BE entities, and you actually asset strip the BE entity. Asset strip is not the right word, but basically you take the cash and you reduce the profit from the BE entity because you provide certain services. And often the black partners within the BE entity do not agree with that, or they don't even know about it, right?
Yeah. Now, that sounds quite involved. Do you think we've got the capacity to detect and to prosecute this?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Because, Pulusang, as I say, we've got 3 cases where the modus operandi, it's almost like these white business people go to a farm where they get taught how to defraud black business people, how to frustrate the policies of black economic empowerment. It is complicated, and that's why Pulusang is a multidisciplinary consultancy company. So we provide a range of services because it often involves legal issues, it involves forensic accounting issues, it involves corporate governance because often they don't meet the requirements. There's no compliance with the Companies Act and CPRO. So we dig deep, we go to CPRO. And the biggest problem, though, Siki, is for black business people is they don't have the money to challenge their white partners in court because they get their money stolen through this fraud. Yeah. And these guys can keep you in court for years. So even if you have a strong legal case, they can raise technicalities. And what we do is we look at alternative ways of dealing with that. There are a whole range of mechanisms that black business people can use to get redress. But you're correct, it is often very complex. That's why you need a multidisciplinary focus.
All right, we're going to pick up on that. And then I want to look at the impact on small businesses. But also, we know that there are cases where black beneficiaries are not always innocent here. Some get the contracts and then subcontract them on to somebody else, which also is a form of fronting. So we'll talk about that as well. And we'll take calls on 0891 104 207, SMSs 34701.
Morning Talk with Siki Mgabadeli.
Talking about black economic empowerment, focusing on fronting this morning, and we're taking calls on 0891 104 207, SMSs 34701, in conversation with the chairperson of Pulusang BBE Resolution Services, that is Christina Qunta. Let's talk about the form of fronting that I was talking about, where someone gets a contract because they are a black person and then they subcontract it on to a white company to complete the work, and there's absolutely no skills transfer there, and that in itself is fraud.
You are correct, Siki. I think there is that. I think that happens too, and we've come across cases like that, and we don't take cases like that where we sense that the black partner's actually been complicit in that fronting. From an ethical point of view, we don't think people like that should afterwards then come and say, okay, I've been defrauded. And that happens. But I think it's not as widespread now as it was before, because also government departments and parastatals are more alert about those sorts of practices, although they don't have the monitoring capacity. And we think with the new act, there would need to be an expanded monitoring capacity. But you're correct, black people do participate in that. And another form of what you've just raised is where black people sit as chairpersons in these companies. The black partner who is being defrauded, because fronting is fraud in essence at common law. The government has just made it, legislated it now, encoded it. The black chairpersons sit in those companies. They are aware that their subsidiaries are defrauding black business people, and they do nothing. For me, that is the same as participating in fronting.
The impact of this, though, because it really would frustrate some smaller businesses, as you say, who don't have the legal muscle, who don't have the financial resources to take on anybody, maybe in a case where they lose a contract, but then they discover that some form of fronting had taken place with those people who actually then got the contract.
Look, it's actually very sad what has happened. We've seen people losing their homes. They lose everything literally out on the street, and their white partners. And I'm talking, the cases we are dealing with involve over like 50, 60 million rand, and it is so unconscionable and it's shocking. But I think and there's criminality involved in it to the extent where people forge documents, people remove people from bank accounts, and I think the new act does provide that there should be special investigation unit cooperation between, say, the CPIC and the commission, the BE commission that is being set up, and I think you can get to the bottom of this, and what the act also says is the amendment bill that's before Parliament now. If you've been found guilty of fronting, you will not do business with government again, and I think that's going to be a very good deterrent. But it's very costly to the economy. It's very costly to people individually, because, as I say, they literally lose everything.
Let's take a call from Dede in Kuruman. Morning.
Hello, Siki, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Dede? Yo, all right, let's put Dede on a hold and see if we can fix his line. In the meantime, let's hear from Dikosha in Johannesburg. Morning.
Good morning, Siki. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
No, I'm fine, man. Siki, I'm a small business practitioner, and I'm involved in construction. I think that's where a lot of fronting goes and so on. The one thing that is, I think, it's a major stumbling block towards BEE. I think it's the administrative capacity of various government institutions and so on. I think they themselves, they do not have the capacity or the necessary skills to can manage some of the somewhat complex contract management systems that are involved in that. I mean, I'm currently involved in a dispute with one municipality here.
Yeah.
And this has been ongoing since effectively last year, September. And the project is complete and so on.
Yeah.
But there's issues that are being disputed and so on. And I think that we have gone long over the specified dispute resolution periods and so on. And I think that there just don't seem to be capacity to deal with the matters effectively or so on. So that is my input on the BE. I'm a very passionate business person, and I hope that I've gotten. I feel sometimes I feel insulted when people call government business people entrepreneurs and so on and so on, because I tell you the same. I would expect to be judged on the same conditions, same performance measures as any other established business in the area that I'm in. But what we are seeing is there's lack of support within the institution to can fully understand the things that we go through. I mean, I've been in the business that I'm in since 2003 full time. I've not traded as any other thing else, and I've at some point I've realized some steady growth and there was progress. But now with changes in various factors, you find that when you need support from the administration, not in terms of lacking the performance standards or anything, but just to understand the conditions that we operate in.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hear what Christine thinks about that. But Christine, this issue that he raises is very important because you were talking about monitoring a little bit earlier as well. And he's saying that the administrative capacity of government institutions and skills to manage complex contract management systems is not there.
Look, he's correct. I think we know that, especially in municipalities, there's significant problems around skills and so on. We, for instance, try to get, using the Promotion of Access to Information Act, to get information out of municipalities and some parastatals. The 30 days pass, they don't even respond. And when you insist, they then say, "Oh, we don't have the archives." So it is a major problem. And I think Rome wasn't built in one day. I think there have been significant efforts by government to change it. I think the private sector has to cooperate. And there is a broader question in this, which is that why should government have to legislate an important component of restructuring the economy, which is black economic empowerment? And so you see the levels of resistance by white business creates these problems that we have. But I think over a period of time, particularly the BBE Commission, because remember, in terms of the new amendment bill, the amendments, there will be established a BBE Commission. And that commission, if I can just also give people sort of remedies that they have when this happens. The commission, when it is established and when the act is promulgated, the commission will investigate complaints and it will also monitor, and hopefully it will say what capacity can we create within government departments to deal with these problems.
Let's hear from John, NPE. Hi, John. Hey, man. These people who are phoning and driving, it's bad, John.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you, so I'm going to put you on hold.
You cannot hear me.
I can't hear you. There's a funny echo going on.
Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks, John. Let's see if we can pick up Joseph in Bloemfontein. Hi, Joseph.
Hi, Siki and your guest.
Hi.
Siki, I just want to get clarity on the issue where a black company gets a tender from government or from wherever, and then he subcontract a white, owned company to complete the contract. Is it also a crime, or what does the Act say around that issue?
Okay. Thanks, Joseph.
Okay, thanks.
Bye. The issue I'd raised before, is it dealt with specifically, Christine?
I think it is dealt with. I think it depends how you do it and whether you disclose upfront to government when you apply for the tender, because there is an acknowledgement that black companies, particularly small businesses, don't have all the skills to carry out. But there has to be an element of skills transfer, so it can't just be a sale of the contract. And so I think it's how it is structured that will make the difference, whether this is a form of fronting or not. I don't know the particulars, but I think people must just be careful, and it's important to have a written agreement when you enter that and disclose this to the parastatal, because and if there was monitoring, the government department would see whether in fact the skills transfer provisions in the agreement are carried out.
Some SMSs, Sifiso says, fronting undermines transformation and it is fraud to be dealt with ruthlessly. Someone says, South Africa will never reconcile. It's evident we need our own businesses. Kay says, as long as the means of production are owned by a minority, indigenous Africans will forever be Izitunzela Zabelungu and other groups who were privileged. That's from Okosi Makatuka in PE. And Sapiri says, what about government officials getting someone to tender and then ask 50% of the tendered money before a service is provided? And someone says, some black people are happy to be black hostages that sell their souls. And another one says, I know of at least 10 Indian and colored companies in our community doing this openly. Please bring up this race group as well. Otherwise, you may be called racist. And another one says, please provide me with the number of the organization the lady represents, as I have the same problem of fronting. So interesting, it's happening, and people, as you were saying, don't know what recourse they have.
Yes, I think, let me just quickly say to people, the Companies Act, apart from the amendment bill, because I'm not sure when that is going to be promulgated, but when it's promulgated, it will make a very dramatic difference, and it will benefit black businesses who are being defrauded. But for the moment, the Section 168 of the Companies Act does provide a mechanism where if any of the provisions of the Companies Act have been breached, you can lodge a complaint with the commission. There is a commission and there's a tribunal, and I understand the tribunal has just been appointed, the head of the tribunal. Then there's also a BBE desk at the DTI, and they are actually very passionate about dealing with this problem. The legislation is one of the best pieces of legislation that have gone through in the last few years. So I think people must utilize Section 168, and they must go to the DTI, the BE desk. They must go onto the DTI website. So until that act comes, there are things they can do. But what they must also do is, if you are going to go into a transaction with a white business, make sure that you have an agreement, that you seek legal advice. You might try and save money by not paying lawyers or using lawyers of the other side, but in the end, you will actually save more money if you go to a lawyer and get legal advice.
And the punitive measures that come with this?
It is jail. I think it's 3 years that you can go to jail for fronting.
That's a nice deterrent.
You also, what is interesting about it is that it also will hold liable the person who knew about this and did nothing. Say if there's a government department where they're aware, because now people complain to some government departments or parastatals, and those parastatals don't actually do anything. If that happens, that particular official can also go to jail if he knew and he indirectly supported the fronting. And
how do people get in touch with you, Christy?
We have a website. It's www.pulusang, which PHOLOSANG, and they must go onto our website. All our contact details are there and what we do.
Wait,
and then
is it .co? Is it .co.za?
Yes, it's pulusang.co.za.
Okay. All right, there we go. So that's how you can get a hold of them. www.PHOLOSANG.co.za. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Siki, for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Some of your SMSs... Someone says, black guys get government contracts at twice the value. The whites get the job done at half the contract value. Black economic embezzlement. Viva Africa. That's from Barney. And Bartlett in Middleburg says, if I win a tender for 3 million and hand it to another company for 2 million, is it fronting? Well, if you're just handing it over and you actually got the tender for the purposes of doing that, it could be considered fronting, Bartlett. And someone says, what about companies that hire blacks in the human resources department and elevate them to directorship and use them to win government tenders or upgrade their BE status? The next thing is the company scores the highest points with virtually no black representation in the board, save for that one person.